Ah, the sea. A place where dreams set sail and legends are forged in the heat of battle and the whirl of the wind. It is on these vast, unpredictable waters that our tale begins, one of ambition, fire, and an ancient artifact said to possess unimaginable power. Let me tell you about a young adventurer, fearless and driven by an unyielding dream, Kaito Flame. Kaito was not born into nobility or grandeur. He was the son of a simple fisherman, but from the very first time he saw the horizon stretch out before him, a spark ignited in his heart. He dreamed of something more. He dreamed of adventure. He dreamed of the Firestorm Crown. Now, you might wonder what a crown made of fire and legend could possibly be. Allow me to enlighten you. The Firestorm Crown, as it is told in whispered tales and ancient scrolls, is no ordinary relic. Crafted by the primordial gods of flame, the crown is said to grant its wearer dominion over the very elements themselves: fire, water, earth, and air. A power so vast it could reshape the world. Kaito's dream? To find that crown, and with it, to change the world. But Kaito was not alone in this dream. Oh no, many sought the Firestorm Crown, from greedy kings to tyrannical warlords. Even the government, an oppressive empire that held dominion over vast lands and oceans, had set its eyes on the artifact, hoping to control its power for their own dark ambitions. Yet, Kaito was no ordinary adventurer. He had a plan, and more importantly, he had a crew. First, there was Ayla Seaheart, a mysterious water mage who could bend the tides themselves to her will. Her long, flowing hair was as blue as the deepest oceans, and her eyes sparkled with a wisdom that only the sea could bestow. She had lived a life of isolation on a forgotten island before Kaito found her, her magic misunderstood by the world. Now she stood by his side, her loyalty as deep as the seas. Then came Rook Stonefist, a towering figure, built like a mountain with skin that could turn to stone at will. The earth could be his ally, or his weapon. A quiet man, reserved and grounded, Rook had once been a slave in a mining colony before Kaito freed him. He swore an oath to never again be shackled, and now his strength was used to protect and fight for a world worth living in. Lastly, there was Zephyr Windsong, the most unpredictable member of the crew. A sky-born rogue, Zephyr could command the winds and control the very air around him. With a mischievous grin and quick wit, he always had a clever idea up his sleeve, though not always a good one. But when it came to battle, his lightning-fast reflexes and sharp instincts made him invaluable. Zephyr had his own reasons for seeking the Firestorm Crown, though none of them were entirely clear. Even to him. Together, they sailed the seas aboard their ship, the Ember Storm, a vessel built from the ashes of old battles and long-forgotten legends. With Kaito as their captain, they ventured into the heart of the unknown. Each island they visited offering both treasures and perils, rival pirate crews, treacherous sea monsters, and the ever-present threat of the government's elite force, the Elemental Knights. Every pirate knows that the road to treasure is never a straight one. The Ember Storm fought through tempests and skirmishes, raiding and plundering those who dared cross their path. But the crown, the Firestorm Crown, it was more than just an object to Kaito. It was a symbol of everything he longed for: freedom, power, and a chance to finally put an end to the government's reign of tyranny. One fateful night, a storm unlike any other came upon them, darker than the deepest abyss. Lightning cracked across the sky, and waves the size of mountains loomed. In the distance, an eerie glow flickered, faint but unmistakable. The Firestorm Crown, it seemed, was drawing closer, but there was no time to celebrate. The sea serpent was upon them, a massive creature with scales of silver and black. The serpent rose from the depths, its eyes burning with fury. It was a guardian, one that the legends spoke of, sent to protect the crown. The crew knew they had to fight. This was no ordinary sea monster, but a force of nature itself. Ayla summoned the tides, crashing waves into the serpent's body, while Zephyr whipped the winds around its head, confusing it. Rook, standing firm on the deck, used his earth-shaping magic to create massive stone barriers to shield them from the creature's attacks. And Kaito? He wielded his sword with the ferocity of a flame, raging and unstoppable, hacking through the serpent's scaled hide. It was a battle that lasted for hours, but in the end, the sea serpent, wounded and exhausted, retreated back into the depths from which it came. The crew had proven their strength. As the storm subsided, the horizon ahead revealed a massive island, a place of ancient ruins and untold secrets. This was it, the final destination on their journey to claim the Firestorm Crown. But as they sailed closer, something dark stirred. A rival crew, the Black Flame Pirates, had already made their way to the island. Their captain, a vicious pirate known only as Captain Drax, was a fire-wielding maniac who burned anything in his path. The race for the crown had become even more dangerous, and that was when Kaito realized something. The crown was not just about the power it could bestow, it was about the responsibility it carried. The choice he made would shape not only his fate, but the fate of every person he held dear. Would he use its power to protect the world, or would he succumb to the temptation of domination? The winds of destiny were changing. The final battle was drawing near. And so our brave crew of misfits steered the Ember Storm toward the island, knowing full well that they would face the fiercest trials. Yet, the Firestorm Crown awaited, its power calling to them, and its dangers just as real. But no matter what awaited them, one thing was certain. The legend of Kaito Flame and his crew was far from over. As the Ember Storm drew closer to the island, the air grew thick with anticipation. The crew stood at the bow, eyes fixed on the dark silhouette of the island, rising from the mist like a sleeping giant. Ancient spires jutted from the rocky cliffs, their stone faces weathered by time and forgotten by history. This was no ordinary land. This was a place steeped in old magic, where the elements themselves whispered in the winds, in the waves, and in the ground beneath their feet. Kaito Flame stood tall, a determined fire burning in his amber eyes. He clenched his fist around the hilt of his sword. "It's almost time. The Firestorm Crown will be ours," he said, his voice unwavering. Ayla Seaheart, ever the calm presence, stared out at the island, her brow furrowed in thought. "We may not be the only ones after the crown," she said softly. "The island's magic, it feels different. Stronger. As if it's protecting something." Rook Stonefist, who had been silent for most of the journey, grunted, cracking his knuckles. "Let 'em try. We've faced worse." But Zephyr Windsong, always the unpredictable one, cocked his head, his wild eyes scanning the horizon. "I have a feeling this one's going to be fun," he grinned, "and I think we've got more than a few surprises waiting for us." The moment they docked on the island's shores, a heavy silence fell. The air was thick with magic, a palpable force that seemed to press in from every direction. The crew disembarked, their feet sinking slightly into the soil, which felt as though it were alive beneath them. "We need to stay alert," Kaito said, his voice low but commanding. "This is where the real battle begins." The island was unlike anything they'd seen before, a twisted labyrinth of jagged rocks, ancient ruins, and towering trees whose roots seemed to move with a life of their own. Strange symbols were carved into the stone, glowing faintly with an ethereal blue light. The island had been here for centuries, maybe longer. Perhaps longer than anyone even remembered. They hadn't ventured far when they encountered their first challenge, a massive stone golem standing guard at the entrance to the inner temple. Its eyes were hollow, but the moment the crew stepped onto the stone path, its ancient form began to move, grinding gears and stone against stone as it rumbled to life. Kaito grinned, a fiery determination flashing in his eyes. "I'll take the first swing." With a roar, he charged forward, his sword blazing with a trail of fire as it cut through the air. The golem's arm rose like a mountain, ready to strike, but Kaito was faster. He slashed with all his might, the flames erupting. in a brilliant explosion that shook the ground beneath them. But the golem wasn't done. It absorbed the fire, its stony body glowing as the heat poured into it. The ground beneath Kaito trembled as the golem's fist came crashing down. "Ayla!" Kaito shouted. Ayla stepped forward, her arms raised. With a flick of her wrist, the sea itself responded. Waves surged from the air, coiling around the golem's arm, pulling it back just enough for Kaito to dodge. The massive creature stumbled, and Rook took advantage of the moment. He slammed his fist into the ground, sending a shockwave of stone up from the earth to shatter the golem's leg, sending it crashing to the ground in a heap of broken stone. It wasn't over yet. The golem's core began to glow brighter, the magic within it reaching its peak. "Zephyr!" Kaito called. Zephyr flashed a mischievous grin and pointed his fingers toward the sky. "I'll handle this!" In a flash of movement, he summoned, the winds whipping them into a howling vortex. The winds howled like a storm, and with one final gust, the golem's glowing core was blown apart, scattering its pieces across the battlefield. The crew stood in a circle around the shattered remnants of the golem, catching their breath. "That was close," Ayla said, exhaling, "but we're not out of danger yet." "No," Kaito agreed, scanning the area. "We've just begun." They continued deeper into the island, each step taking them further into the heart of its mystery. They came upon a great chasm, a rift in the earth that seemed to stretch down forever. Across the gap stood the entrance to a grand temple, a massive stone structure draped in vines, its doors intricately carved with symbols of the elements. "We're almost there," Rook said, his eyes narrowing as he studied the chasm. "Almost isn't good enough," Zephyr said with a grin, spinning in place. "Who needs a bridge when you've got wind power?" Without waiting for a response, he kicked off the ground and soared into the air, his form vanishing into the clouds. A few moments later, the wind swirled beneath the crew, lifting them up as Zephyr returned, his arms outstretched, directing the air currents. The crew glided safely across, landing softly on the other side. They approached the temple with caution, but the moment they set foot on the stone steps, a booming voice echoed through the air. "Foolish mortals. Only those worthy may enter." Out of the shadows stepped a figure, tall, draped in robes of swirling fire. His eyes burned with an intense flame, and his voice crackled like thunder. "It's him," Kaito whispered, recognizing the figure instantly. "Captain Drax." The Black Flame pirate captain stood before them, a figure of darkness, with flames flickering from his fingertips. His smirk twisted into something far darker. "So, the great Kaito Flame has finally arrived. I've been waiting." "We don't have time for your games, Drax," Kaito spat, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his sword. "The crown is ours." "You think you're worthy?" Drax laughed, the flames around him intensifying. "The crown will test your very soul. Only the one who understands true power can claim it. You're nothing but a child playing at being a king." A fierce battle erupted, the flames of Drax meeting the might of Kaito's fiery sword, while Ayla summoned massive tsunamis to crash against the Black Flame pirates. Zephyr darted in and out of the air, his agility making him a difficult target, while Rook tore through the stone pillars with earth-shattering blows. The ground trembled as fire and water collided, as wind and stone clashed. The fate of the Firestorm Crown was on the line, and with each strike it became clearer. This was the final trial. In the chaos, Kaito's mind sharpened, his determination solidifying. The crown wasn't just a symbol of power, it was a test of who he was, who they all were. Was he truly worthy to wield its power? The flames roared higher, and as the battle reached its peak, the temple's doors slowly began to open, beckoning them forward. The real journey had just begun. The Firestorm Crown awaited them inside. But would they be the ones to claim it? Or would darkness swallow their dreams? Narrator. The storm of battle rages on, but one thing is certain. Only those who are prepared to sacrifice everything can claim the Firestorm Crown. Will Kaito Flame and his crew rise to the challenge? Or will they fall to the flames of ambition and betrayal? The next chapter of their adventure is yet to be written. The doors of the ancient temple groaned as they slowly creaked open, a blinding light spilling from the cracks in the stone. The crew, battered from their battle with Captain Drax, took cautious steps toward the threshold, where the very air seemed charged with energy, crackling like a storm ready to unleash. The flames of Drax still burned brightly, his laughter echoing off the walls as he wiped the sweat from his brow, the scorch marks on his robes giving him an almost demonic appearance. You think you've won? This is just the beginning, Kaito Flame. You may have defeated me, but the crown, it tests more than strength. It tests the heart. Kaito, his own breath coming in heavy gasps, glared at Drax. I don't care about your test, Drax. We're here for the crown. Nothing's going to stop us. Zephyr, barely winded and grinning as always, shot a glance at Kaito. It's always a good idea to get the last word in, but I think we need to keep moving. Something tells me the crown's not going to just hand itself over. Ayla was already stepping into the temple, her expression unreadable as she felt the overwhelming pull of ancient magic within the walls. Something is wrong, she whispered. The elements. They're not just guarding the crown. They are the crown. The rest of the crew followed her into the temple, and as they moved deeper, the air grew denser, charged with an almost tangible power. The walls seemed to pulse with ancient energy, the carvings of elemental symbols glowing faintly as though the temple itself were alive, watching, judging. At the heart of the temple stood an enormous pedestal where the Firestorm Crown rested, its molten metal base glowing like the heart of a volcano. But it wasn't just any crown. It was a swirling mass of flame, water, earth, and air, constantly shifting between the elements, an embodiment of the primal forces themselves. A tense silence filled the temple. All eyes were on the crown. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. Do you feel it? Kaito whispered, his voice reverberating through the chamber. The power, it's calling to us. More like tempting us, Ayla muttered, her eyes narrowing. The magic here is so powerful I feel like it could consume us if we're not careful. Zephyr grinned. Well, that's a good reason to hurry up and claim it then, right? Rook stepped forward, his massive hands trembling slightly as the ground beneath his feet seemed to react to his presence. He felt the earth's call, ancient and deep. This power. It's alive. Just then, a deep rumble shook the entire temple, and from the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in a storm of violent winds, a shadowy figure, draped in a cloak woven from the very air itself. The air around the figure crackled with energy. It was a woman, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. You think you're the only ones who seek the crown? Her voice echoed like 100 whispers carried by the wind. The crown was never meant to be claimed by any one person. It belongs to the world. The crew froze. I am Ayla Seaheart, the true heir to the Firestorm Crown, the woman proclaimed, stepping into full view. She extended her hands toward the crown, her fingers weaving through the air as though she were drawing on its very essence. The crew's shock was palpable. Ayla was not just another rival pirate. It was clear she knew the crown in a way none of them could comprehend. I've spent my life searching for this, Ayla continued, her eyes locked on Kaito with a knowing glint. The crown's power cannot simply be wielded. It must be shared. I will restore balance to the world by claiming the elements, by uniting them. Kaito's expression hardened. You're wrong. The crown isn't a tool for balance, it's a weapon. A weapon to free this world from the government that seeks to control it. Ayla shook her head. No, Kaito. The Firestorm Crown was never meant to control. It was meant to guide, to keep the forces of nature in harmony. If you wield it alone, it will consume you. You'll become just like the very people you seek to overthrow. A tense silence descended on the group as they stood face to face, with Ayla Seaheart, the mysterious woman who claimed to be the crown's rightful heir. The air grew even heavier, swirling around them as the elements themselves seemed to respond to her presence. Then, the temple began to shake. The ground split open beneath them, and the walls groaned as if they were alive. The crown on the pedestal flared, its flames roaring, its waters crashing, its stones shifting, and its winds howling with an unnatural fury. The power of the elements, now unrestrained, began to spiral out of control. "It's reacting to her," Ayla shouted, her voice filled with alarm. "The crown's power is awakening." Kaito's eyes widened. "No! We have to stop her before she unleashes it on the world." But before they could act, Eris raised her arms, and the very air itself seemed to twist around her, binding them in a whirlwind of elemental fury. Kaito's crew fought against the forces, but the power was too great. In the chaos, a twisted laugh echoed, familiar yet insidious. "You fool, Kaito!" Drax's voice rang out from the shadows. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" From behind Eris, the true twist of fate revealed itself. Captain Drax wasn't defeated. He had never left. The temple trembled as Drax stepped forward, his body now glowing with fire. The flames were no longer just his weapon, they were his very form. His laughter turned into a dark, malevolent cackle. "The Firestorm Crown was meant to be a weapon, and I will wield it, along with Eris. Together, we'll reshape this world." Kaito's heart dropped as the truth hit him like a tidal wave. Eris and Drax were working together. They were both after the same goal, to use the crown's power to dominate the elements, to wield them as tools of destruction. The crown wasn't just an artifact. It was a living force, a heart of the world's primal powers. And now, Kaito and his crew were faced with a choice: claim it for themselves and risk being consumed, or destroy it before it could fall into the hands of those who sought to control the very elements. The final decision lay before them. Would Kaito Flame sacrifice everything to save the world from a power far beyond any one man? Or would the Firestorm Crown, with its unparalleled power, be wielded by those who sought only to conquer? In the end, the crown's legacy was not one of control, but of choice. And in that moment, Kaito Flame and his crew stood at the crossroads of fate. What would they choose?